Hello again, plant friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sarah, and today I thought I would talk about taking care of your plants when you're feeling busy or overwhelmed. So I thought this might be a great video to come back to, my first kind of back in about 6 months here. And the reason I took that break, if you haven't already watched my kind of video on why I took that break and what changes are coming, you can definitely check that out. But kind of the basic idea behind why I took a break is I was just feeling very busy, very overwhelmed, and I had a lot going on in my life. So this meant that not only was I not filming my YouTube videos, but also there were some times when I wasn't taking the best care of my plants. And I wanted to talk a little bit about some tricks that I used to kind of keep them thriving when maybe I didn't have the time for them. Now, I do want to start this video off. I'm going to talk a little bit about being busy and then maybe about just not having the energy or the desire to take care of your plants. If you are feeling severely depressed or you really feel like you're just mentally overwhelmed, I urge you, please go ahead and get some professional help. Seek out somebody that can help you kind of cope with those feelings and figure out what's going on. So what I'm going to be talking about today is more of a mild or just like a temporary busyness. And if you feel like maybe you need more help, please go ahead and get the help that you need. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some things that I used when I was feeling a little busy and overwhelmed. Hey, editing Sarah popping in here. So it looks like I must have lost the footage of that first point that I was trying to make. So I'll just kind of give you a summary here. Basically, my first point is thinking about all of your responsibilities that you have and kind of which things you can kind of like drop the ball or let go of, and kind of making some priorities. So if you have things like work or school deadlines coming up that are really important to hit, that maybe those are times when your plant care needs to kind of, just take a back seat for a little bit. Or maybe your plant care is really self-care and that's something you really enjoy and you'd like to let go of something else in your life. That might be going to the gym or making homemade meals or whatever it is. It's just kind of about setting those priorities for yourself and knowing which things maybe you need to prioritize and are important to you, and when maybe you need to take a step back. Overall, plants are supposed to be a hobby, hopefully a relaxing and enjoyable hobby. And if it's not that for you, maybe it's time to take a step back, downsize a little bit, and reevaluate maybe what your priorities are, whether those are plants or other things in your life. So again, sorry, I don't know what happened to that footage. Now back to past me for the rest of my points. My next tip is to go ahead and let care of your kind of perfect or Instagram worthy plant care. So if you've been around my channel, you know I live in a pretty dry climate and I have to kind of keep my humidifiers filled, and actually sometimes I have to help some of my leaves out because it's so dry where I live. Now, when I was super busy, when I was feeling overwhelmed, I definitely wasn't so consistent with my feedings, my waterings. I wasn't as consistent with maintaining the humidity in here, and definitely there were some leaves that struggled to come out. A great example of this would be on my Monstera Thai constellation. This leaf is not my favorite, right? It's got a little bit of just kind of, it struggled coming out, right? It wasn't getting what it needed. Now, my plant is still alive. It's still doing okay. So if you can let go of some of that perfection, some of just maintaining everything exactly how it looks on Instagram, you can get your plants to still thrive and still do great. They just may not look perfect. And that one kind of leads into my next point about prioritizing your plant care. This might look different for everybody. I definitely have some higher dollar value plants in here that were my priority, making sure that they got the more consistent waterings, making sure that I was checking them for pests and I was feeding them more regularly. And there were a couple plants, I'm looking at my calatheas that don't exist anymore, that just kind of struggled, that kind of suffered. And for me, that was plants that either I just didn't really care very much about anymore, or maybe that I knew were easier to replace if they did happen to accidentally die. Now, I know that sounds horrible, and I want to say that I also did give some plants away before they got to that kind of neglectful state, but If you're really going through this extended period of maybe not having the time or the energy to take care of the plants, you definitely want to prioritize anything that you would consider more special. So that might be higher dollar value, kind of harder to get a hold of, or maybe you have special plants that have special meaning to you. They were given to you by somebody important, and you really want to prioritize those and their care. Again, that kind of leads into my next point, which would be to take cuttings of any of those extra special plants. So first of all, cuttings are a great insurance policy. If something does happen to go wrong with your kind of mother plant, that you have a backup so that you're not worried about, well, what if I missed a watering? Did I water it yesterday? Did I water it a week ago? And it just kind of is a nice insurance policy. The other thing is cuttings in a glass are way easier to take care of. You just take that cutting, you stick it in some water in a sunny spot, and you can let it grow roots for quite a while before you need to plant it up. I definitely have a couple plants that I either took insurance cuttings of, or I took a cutting and I'm just letting it chill in the water. Way easier to take care of than trying to worry about soil or leca or anything like that. So the next trick that I kind of use are some easier ways to take care of your plants. The very first kind of easy, and I would call this a more temporary fix, is if it's just going to be a week or two, I find it's way easier to walk around with a watering can and just kind of top off each of my plants rather than bringing them to the sink and letting them drain completely. Now, I know this isn't a great long-term solution. It definitely can have its problems and encourage root rot and things like that, but there have been some days where I only have an hour to get things done and trying to water all my plants in an hour. I can't take them to the sink. I needed to walk around with a watering can. I don't recommend this as a long-term solution or more than a week or two in a row, but it's definitely something you can do as a quick fix if you just have one busy day or weekend. Some somewhat longer-term solutions would be to find some self-watering sorts of tools. I have a couple here. I have these kind of little, they're like terracotta and you fill them up. I have these in some of my hanging plants, as well as in some of my plants that I know like kind of more consistent moisture. So the idea behind these, or maybe you've seen those glass bulbs that have kind of the really narrow point, is that they just let out a little bit of water at a time. Again, these are really great for things where maybe you know you're not going to be able to water for 2 weeks, or you have a plant that just needs to stay more consistently watered and can't handle drying out between waterings. The other option are these little self-watering pots. You can find these all over Amazon. I know Kaylee Ellen has a bunch very similar to this, and you can use them with soil or with leca. I like these because it gives me, again, a little bit more leeway and a little bit more consistency between waterings if I happen to have a busy week or a busy weekend and I can't quite get to all of my plants. I'll definitely make sure to link these couple of products as well as some more that I know of down in my description box, so you can check these out if you think they might be helpful. My next tip is, if it's possible, see if you can find a little bit of help. This can look a variety of ways. I know of a couple of very severe cases where people, for whatever reason, couldn't take care of their plants, and they actually sent their plants to kind of plant foster homes where other people in a local community, other plant people, would take care of plants on a short-term basis until those people got back on their feet. Now, that's kind of an extreme example, but it is out there and it is possible if that's something that you think you might need. On a much smaller scale, that might be somebody in your home, a friend, a relative, somebody that can stop by, and they can help with a variety of things. They might be able to help with a variety of things that could be your plant care. Maybe you give them some easier care plants that they can just take care of the watering, and you only have to worry about kind of your special babies that need the extra care. Or maybe, again, the plant care is really what's calming and soothing to you, and they can take something else off of your plate. Especially if you know this is a temporary situation or something that is maybe a little bit shorter term, I really encourage you to reach out and see who can help, either again with the plant care or take something else off of your plate so that you can take care of your plant babies. And my last point, my last suggestion, I guess, is knowing whether your situation is more temporary or a little bit longer term. Now, I know it's not always possible to know these things, but for example, I knew that my classes weren't going to last forever. Getting my master's degree was something that had a definite end to it. And even within that, I had a syllabus that would tell me this week is going to be really busy, this week is not going to be so busy. So maybe you're in a situation, maybe at work or school, where you know you have a few busy weeks and a few off weeks. That can be very helpful in understanding what kind of tricks and tips you can use to take care of those plants on a shorter term basis. And if you know it's longer term, that might be a situation where you have to downsize. You have to get rid of some plants that maybe you know you can replace. Maybe you choose to get rid of the more finicky plants. For instance, I got rid of a ton of my calatheas because I knew I just couldn't keep up with their care. So again, if you know it's a longer term situation, you might treat that a little bit differently than a temporary busy week or two, or maybe just feeling a little bit overwhelmed for a shorter period of time. I know we all want these big and beautiful, gorgeous houses full of just so many plants, and it's a little bit addicting. We want to collect all of these plants. But knowing our limits and knowing what we have the time and the energy and the capacity to take care of can really help this hobby be enjoyable and not overwhelming. So those were just a few of my tips and tricks, things that I've used over the past 6 months to kind of help me keep up on my plant care as well as all of my other responsibilities. I hope you found them helpful. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. Maybe consider subscribing as well if you are new here. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in a couple of weeks with another video. Bye.